This is the BAM School Podcast, where we talk about business adventure and mission with your host, Buddy Rathmel.
All right, welcome to the BAM School Podcast. I'm here with my guest and good friend, Scott Salvigsen. We go way back to 1995, at least, when we played soccer together for what is now Clark Summit University. We were national champions, I might add, that year. Now I've realized later there's like a million national champions every year, but we were two of the million. So we got that going for us. And Scott, I'm going to title this, I think, what did I say? I had a title yesterday and it totally left my mind. The not intriguing entrepreneur. What was it?
No, that's good. Unconventional, I think you said. Unconventional entrepreneur.
Unconventional, intriguing, man of mystery, and entrepreneur, Scott Salvigsen. He has all kinds of projects always going on, from different kinds of ways to get meat to boats at the bottom of bays and churches and firehouses and golf courses and islands and a few other things that I didn't mention yet. So I'm excited to get into your story. So welcome to the podcast, Scott.
Thank you. It's good to connect again.
Yeah. One of the things that I thought, it has been really fun reconnecting over the last couple of years, but kind of one of the things that cemented our reconnecting was an adventure to your island. And then I think that doesn't happen enough. So we went to your island. Give us the spiel on Duck Island, because that's an exciting story in and of itself.
Well, Duck Island, my twin brother is Stan is my partner in crime, one of the partners. Our spouses are also fully culpable in this. We don't do this stuff behind their backs, and that's one thing that a lot of people say. To my wife, how do you deal with this? How do you live with this? And I say she's guilty as much as I am. We're both guilty parties. Yeah. But that was an adventure that started probably 2012. And Stan and I were on vacation with our families down in Hatteras. And every time back, we were thinking of reasons not to leave. That's like the typical vacation, right? So on the way back, we're looking for places on the water to buy, just dreaming, looking at different stuff. And we found some islands with some houses on them on the Sound side and the Outer Banks. And we started, I'll use the word stalking, but researching. We'll do researching. Started researching some of these properties and looking at them, and some of them had pictures online and stuff, so we'd post them on our pages, and that was for years. We just had pictures up, and Stan and I would talk about it now and then. One day I called and I was like, I wonder what the deal is. But there's one island with just a single house on it, and so we started to pursue that a little bit, find out who owned it, look through tax stuff, just kind of digging up information. Then a year we sat on that information, and I stumbled across a picture. It was actually the picture on my desktop on my computer, and so I'd sit there and look at it every day. One day I was like, I wonder if that person would look to sell that place, right? So we start, poking around. I find only a PO box with her name on it that was listed on a tax bill that was public knowledge. So I hand wrote a letter. Basically had to Google how to write a handwritten letter. I had forgotten. It's been so long since. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to write it so I know that I did everything that I could. To get the answers and get that thing, I wrote it. 2 weeks later, I get an email back. I put my email address in there, and the lady was like, yeah, I'm looking to sell. I mean, let's talk. And she called me 3 days later on a Sunday night. And I had a whole list of questions that I wanted to ask, zoning and all kinds of different things, size of the property, wells, fresh water. And she rattled right through. We had a price point that Stan and I were happy with if we were looking to, purchase that. And, it was this odd, unconventional certainly pursuit and negotiation. Ended up being right in the wheelhouse of what we were looking to do. And um, I said to my wife, I was like, let's go down and I said to the lady, when can we look at it? She's like, well, the only day I don't work is Mondays. And this was the week before Thanksgiving. And we drove out. I called Stan and I'm like, Stan, what are you doing tomorrow morning? Because that's the only Monday between then and Christmas that we could have looked at the thing. And he goes, nothing. He's like, he was right. He was doing a party for his college and career group at his church. He was cooking there. I said, we're going to look at Duck Island tomorrow morning. You want to come? And he's like, that's an 8.5 hour drive. Like, we'd have to leave now, get there at 7 a.m. And Katie, me, and Stan jumped into his Prius. He met us in the middle, and we jumped in his Prius, drove down there, hit a deer on the way down. It was just one of those bizarre. Got there. I think we got a hotel room for like half an hour so we could wash up. And we pull up there, and this lady's dogs, she's standing there, and I'm like, man, I've seen this lady. I know the dog's name. Is like, we've seen this property. We got off on the property, and I'm like, I feel like I've been here 1,000 times because for the last 4 or 5 years, we've been looking at.
Yeah.
Now more of the unconventional. So now what? We get it. It was low overhead, but then there's stuff you got to figure out down the road, and we're still doing that. I mean, I hope I always am. Taking new challenges and figuring it out. Yeah, it's part of the love of the game, I guess.
Yeah, and so we ended up, when I was running the BAM school last year, Chris and I came out, and you and Stan, the four of us, went out to the island, and we were just going to spend the night, I think, and then come back for, in the morning for lunch. And the tide went out, you said, further than it's ever gone up until that point. And so we got to...
it went out to the point. We went out in the morning to get on the boat, and you could see dry land under the boat. It was just tied to the dock, leaning up against the dock. Fortunately, there's cell phones, so we could, send pictures to our family saying we're staying for, a few hours. And no, really, the tide is out. The boat is not little, but it opened up, like you said, an adventure that we could walk. We could walk half the sound out there and explore different islands and different things.
Yeah.
Yep.
That was super fun. And that doesn't happen enough as an adult, I feel like, where, you're just like boys on an adventure doing fun things. And then we were kind of content to like stay at the island, but you had family coming in. Stan was coming back, and your future daughter-in-law and stuff. And so you wanted to get home. We were all just like, we're content to eat peanut butter, honey, and tortilla shells for the next 2 days, but you kind of manhandled.
We were running low. We were running low on supplies for sure.
Yeah, digging out the boat, getting us back. So I just want to list off real quick. I did in the intro some of the things that you've done. Well, actually, let me hit the island just for a minute more. So you've been dialoguing with investors that maybe want to invest millions into this, do something different with it. Do you just kind of let it go as it is and bring people in, charge them for duck hunting? A lot of different options of what you may or will do with the property. It opens up a lot of things. But you have been a real estate developer. You currently own a golf course. You converted a church from a church into a house, and then sold that recently. You are an Airbnb landlord. You have multiple, potentials on your whatever 90 acres or whatever you own there in North Carolina. There's options for more Airbnbs, apartments, sustainable meat. What do you call your meat thing?
Manageable meat. Manageable meat.
And why is it manageable meat?
I'll tell you. I'll tell you. I've tried to go beyond manageable. And I got a cow last December, and it was already
Yeah.
bred. So I'm like, all right, it's a twofer. It's going to have a calf, then I'll have milk. I
Yeah.
could manage that. About 3 months later, thing wandered into the swamp and sunk up to its shoulders. Wait, that's no longer manageable. And so out came the ratchet straps and the ingenuity, the problem solving. And I was like, this is no good. She did have the calf. The calf was going nuts because it couldn't get milk.
Yeah.
I'm up to my armpits in mud trying to shove it out from behind. My wife has a harness from the horse on the thing's face, pulling it. And we got to strap it with the neighbor and my son trying to ratchet strap it out from under the armpits. And
Yeah.
I'm still recovering psychologically and physically from that.
Did
And then
did the
that
cow
happened 3 more
survive?
times. Oh, the
Oh.
cow survived and must have
Yeah.
enjoyed it enough to do that 3 more times. And the fourth time it just went on Craigslist.
Yeah.
I removed it first,
Yeah.
but it was not
Yeah.
manageable. About 2 weeks
Yeah.
later, one of my sheep went in there. That was
Yeah.
easy. I walked in the swamp, I grabbed it, I dragged it out, and it was perfectly fine.
Yeah.
So the manageable meat thing is again, I mean, that's a side deal. I view, local food as a broken system,
Yeah.
and there's so much opportunity to grow and provide locally. And that's something I've been messing with aquaponics and, like I said yesterday, shrimp farming and, something on
Yeah.
local levels that you can, you can produce meat locally,
Yeah.
um, in abundance. But that is, again, an ongoing, experimental venture. And
Yeah.
I think sheep is where it's at right now. So it might
Yeah.
change next time we talk.
So you've tried cows, sheep, pigs, alpacas,
Yeah.
goats, dogs. What
Yeah.
else have you tried?
I have not eaten dogs yet, but
Yeah.
I see where you're going with that. Well, emus, I went there.
Yeah.
Um, the horse got out yet last week. Got the neighbor called me, and I'm supposed to be training for a 5K. I forgot to call you and extend the invite to you, buddy, next time, the 5K.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I hadn't trained. I had to go fetch the horse from about half a mile away. I was running with it back down the street, pulled a muscle during my extensive 5K training, running with the horse down the street. Sure, that's on Instagram somewhere. But yeah, I mean, I've tried a lot of different things. There's catfish, there's shrimp. I mean, I don't know. It's just more of a side thing than anything else, as are many of the things. And I talked to a good friend yesterday about, entrepreneurship. And I know you and I have talked about it over the course of the last year or so. But a lot of entrepreneurship comes down to the why. Like, why are you doing this? Like, why would you get 40 sheep or whatever? And it's not always monetary, right? It's inventors are that way too. They sense a problem or there's something that intrigues them enough to pursue, answer to that problem. Or,
Yeah.
success is the adventure. Success is finding the answers. Success is, maybe even helping somebody else get, someone else might reap all the financial benefits of it, but you figured that problem out.
Yeah.
Which part of that was
No,
getting the boat unstuck from out of the island? I mean, that's the same.
Yeah. Yep. I think that's the thing. Like, you can figure it out. I was using software for a client recently, and I've been emailing back and forth with tech support for 2 months, and they're like, the solution you want just isn't possible. And I was sitting down at my computer, and these are the people that own the software. They work for the company, and they're telling me, no, it cannot do what you want. And I just sat at my computer and I thought for a second, I'm like, how do I make this happen for the client? And I'm like, I bet it can do it. Like, there's a way I can make the software do what the developer is saying it can't do. And so after 2 months, I just sat down at my computer. I played around. I'm doing all the different settings. Boom. An hour later, it does what I've been trying to ask them to help me do for a month. And it's just like, you just play around with it, you figure it out, you come up with a solution that works. And I think there really is something, obviously, you could look to the third world. Like, they always do chickens, a lot of chickens. We tried at our orphanage pigs, and our orphanage director said that was the worst experience of his life. I can't remember if they ate them all or they sold them at the end or whatever. I just remember he's like, chickens are okay, pigs not so okay, for running around. But yeah, I think there's really something in our world to go, how do we, my wife is like, we have 7.5 acres. We need to put fruit trees and berry bushes and just things that will, basically with very little care provide fruit for generations to come, without, like, we plant it once and weed it a little bit and do a little bit of stuff, and we can have that for years to come. What are some of your values that have sustained you in entrepreneurship over the years? You talked with your friend about your why. What is your big why that kind of propels you?
Well, I think that comes down to, a lot of things. I mean, finance is something that always has to get done. For my wife and I talked for the last 25 years, our goal was to create enough or start enough projects that are successful that we don't have to make our decisions based on money. Okay, so it's not a dollar amount. I don't want to be a million. I don't want to be whatever. It's like, can we get past this hump where the decisions that we make on a daily basis are based on how much money we have or don't have? And we've been there. I mean, we've been there, and that's a driving factor. But that value is a matter of, what that determined the why was. Let's just take that out of the equation. Okay, so that was the first step. Our family is a huge reason why. I mean, my kids, I'm super proud of them. We just sent the last 3 boys off to college this past week. Clay's obviously married, Clay. My daughter, 13 years old, is still at home here. But, that's another thing that Katie and I said, the best thing that we could give our kids as inheritance is an example. It's not, a thing or a place or a portfolio. It's an example. And within that example, our relationship with each other, Katie and I, is, first and foremost, our relationship with God that's what is the center of our marriage. But secondly, our relationship with each other is something that's going to last, whether, financially or whatever situation that they're in. It forces us to make the relationship decisions that, are long term. Within that relationship, to never stop growing, to never stop stretching ourselves, taking on new challenges. That's something that it was literally probably 23 years ago, 22 years ago, that Katie and I were like, we'll never back away from everything based on fear. Based on evaluation. I mean, there's stuff that I probably should have backed away from. Getting a cow would be one of them. But, that fear of opportunity, fear of not being able to do it is different than the fear of it not really working or whatever. So the evaluation process has been something that, we have worked on. I'm the ultimate optimist. So whenever I look at anything, I'm like, oh, sounds like a good idea. Let's do it. Right.
Yeah.
And then you start writing stuff down, pros and cons. And the next challenge is, how can I come up with the worst case scenario? And that's what it goes on. Values, and we've talked about this before too. I mean, you treat everybody like they're equals. One thing that we've always stood by was, nobody's better than me. and nobody's worse than me, right?
Yeah.
So when you approach a relationship, business relationship, employee relationship, you know, my effort to improve on myself and take on challenges, it pulls up maybe people that wouldn't be. And I believe in those people more so than they
Yeah.
believe in themselves most
Yeah.
often.
Yep.
Um, and I'll always do that.
Yeah.
That's that's paramount.
Yeah. I think that's awesome. We, early in my youth ministry years, I raised $2,000 for each of 8 students and 2 staff to go with me to mainland Japan for 2 weeks. And we like hiked Fuji. We brought a trainer in from America. Just went around Tokyo. We had a great time. Kids were learning a lot about themselves, getting grounded in how to lead a cell group and teach and all that kind of stuff. And when we got back, 2 of the girls said, "Hey, thanks for this." Like the 2 that were going to be staff, they were like, "Thanks for like helping us learn about ourselves and how we're gifted." In fact, we decided we're not going to help you this year. We're going to go and do this other ministry. And at the time, I was really bummed. Like, wait, I just raised $2,000 for each of you. Like the expectation was, there was going to be some return on this investment. But one of the things that I've realized over the years is that that just little bit of believing in somebody can totally help them when they, maybe they're in doubt, they're struggling, whatever. And just a little bit of encouragement, a little bit of speaking life, speaking some vision, and their lives can go on a totally different trajectory. I heard a couple on a podcast recently that like the guy was just, they were just struggling with like no end jobs just to make it happen. And this guy was a rapper, and his wife, like when they were trying to figure out money, his wife was just like, "You can do this." And she's like, "I'm going all in on you. I'm going to promote you." She knew a little bit of social media. And now it's like they went from like hoping to get like $3,000-$4,000 a month to like $250,000 a month. And the crazy thing was, it was like no one believed this dude could rap except his wife, or maybe she was his girl. I think she was his wife. And she just like put all her belief behind him and totally changed the trajectory of not only like both of their lives, but now they've hired family, families coming in. And I just see that so much in people's stories where somebody believes in them and it changes them. So it's hard too, because there's times when if they just made a different choice, put in a little bit more effort, did this, somebody's trajectory would be different. And sometimes they're like, they slide back into whatever's comfortable or whatever, So anyway, love that value of valuing others. Yeah. Do you have any, does any stories come to mind when you've believed in someone and seen something change in their lives, or I see a little smile there. Something came to your mind.
Well, stories in general, there's a story for everything, but, believing in somebody, and that goes both ways, and everything you just said goes both ways. You believe in somebody and they get to a spot and then they go back to what they were doing before. And I don't know if it's habit, comfort. I think 9 times out of 10, they don't realize that they're doing that. We don't tend to realize the thing that's holding us back. John Maxwell talks about something called a blind spot, where, the value of having a network of friends that are willing to say something like, "You're doing it again," right? Like, we're looking at this and you're actually the piece of the puzzle that's making the thing not work. You're upside down or whatever it is. Like, this would be running great if it wasn't for you. But, I've got, at the golf course, for instance, we've got a guy that, manages everything on site now. It does an incredible job. He started working for us, he was just mowing. I mean, he was just mowing. He was selling dog treats, I think, at the time. And our employee was leaving. He's like, "I got a friend who will replace me." And I'm like, "All right, bring him in." And he will take on anything on his own volition. And he'll call me and say, I don't know about this. I'm like, you can do it. And he'll do it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
sad thing is he does most of the stuff he does better than me.
Yeah.
It's crazy. We were just, Veronica, Clay's wife, we were just up there.
Yeah.
Um, I was doing flooring with Clay and stuff. We're trying to get him move-in ready. And she was working that shift. So she's like, well, I can help.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, you can help. Like, let's do it. She's like, really? And she hammered the first board and it was super loud. It was in the basement on a concrete floor. And she was like, well, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. That was horrifying. And I was like, just put that board in. I'm telling you, when that thing goes in like exactly right, you're going to be thrilled. And she did it. And it was like, oh my goodness. And she just started laying floor as fast. I mean, I've done this many times. As fast as Clay or I'm just, doing it. Got to the end.
Right.
She's handing me boards to cut. And I was like, you cut it.
Yeah.
And she's like, with the saw, like with the battery, electric saw. I'm like, it's no big deal.
Yeah.
And it was and she's like that. She's been a huge blessing and what a great part of the family. But, many things, anything that we talked to her about, she said, I don't know if I can do it. You can do it. And she'll do it excellently.
Yeah.
But you wonder, how many things have you not done because somebody gave you the idea that you couldn't, or just didn't say the simple word like, well, let's try it.
Yeah.
Let's try. What's the worst that could happen?
Yeah.
I guess with the electric saw, there's answers that we don't really want to go into there, but it's the worst that could happen. But, I think that's something that, a lot of people say a teacher or a coach were the most instrumental people in my lives. Well, those two people that believed in you at many points, sometimes probably out of necessity. You're a key player on the team, but it's huge. And finding, entrepreneurship can only you can only do so much. And we often do too much and it waters down the effectiveness of the stuff that we've done well. But finding people that I've seen so many organizations take, if churches, anything, they start off and there's a huge push. There's a vision and people can get on board and they're super excited about it. And years later, sometimes months later, sometimes years later, the leadership can't do it anymore, or they're gone or whatever. And that cool organization gets passed to very capable management.
Yeah.
And for some reason, something's just off. It doesn't carry the same hype. It's just a lot of mechanicals. But I think it usually comes to, at some point, there's a lack of maybe mentorship, but the vision wasn't passed on with the activity. It wasn't ingrained in that. It wasn't, and I felt that with soccer. I mean, that year that we won nationals was legendary. I mean, it was fantastic. Great group of guys, great chemistry. There were other years that it was just like, well, I'm on the team. I mean, we got a game this weekend, whatever. But there wasn't this vision and unity that was created by upperclassmen like yourself. I mean, I was a young buck that year, still am, but mostly mentally. But does the vision, what's your ability to pass that vision on to the next people for them to take it on their own? It is a matter of believing in that person.
Yeah.
There's not a written book. There's nothing, there has to be some mentorship in their belief, a relationship. And that's a very difficult part.
Yeah. I think I was lucky in that my dad, I remember in second grade, I probably wouldn't remember this, but I remember him handing me a drill to drill a hole through a board. And the only reason I remember it is because after the drill went through the board, it grabbed my jeans because I had the board across my lap. drilling a hole. My dad was in the other room doing something. And it ripped up my jeans, but thankfully didn't pierce into my leg and, hit that artery that would have killed me or whatever. But there was a lot of those things that he gave me in third grade when I kicked a soccer ball through the window at my grandma's house. He's like, okay, come with me to the store. This is whatever, the third window you've broken in how many years. From now on, you're going to fix the windows that you break. And it was back in the day when you'd get the pane of glass and the putty and those little metal things, and learn to fix windows in third grade, and just, a lot of those things over the years. And then I remember in college, like Coach Jacobs was, our coach was one of those guys for me where he, at the time I thought, oh, he's giving me responsibility because I'm responsible and I take care of things, which was somewhat true. Like he'd give me money or a van, or, he let me run the snack shop and paid me for that. But as I got older, I realized a lot of this, like he knew I had to pay for my last 2 years of college myself. So he was making a way for me to be able to do that, And I remember one summer at camp, there was some other kid there. I can't remember who it was. He would come to our camps that we would run, but he didn't go to school with us. And I remember just like a moment of insecurity saying something like, I said something about this guy, like, man, I bet, you wish he was on our team or something like that. And coach just looked at me like I was an idiot and was like, buddy, you're so much better than him. And then just like looked away and like walked off, But just those moments of belief, of trust. And that was a year that I was a first team All-American. And I think a lot of that was just from like coach, I did work for like 15 years to get to that point. But then there's also something where it's like people believing in you like propels you. It pushes you forward, and now at this stage of life to like look through people and go, hey, you can do this. Like you're able to do this. Like take that next step, make the leap. And now a lot of times I'm coaching people my age or around my age where it's like, hey, you don't have to be an entrepreneur who's like on the hamster wheel and life is crazy. Like you can get systems in place. You can do some of these things. Like I've seen people do it. Like there have been seasons in my life when I've done it and seasons when everything's crazy. But yeah, I think those pieces of like believing in people, pushing them forward, seeing, God do really cool things through it is kind of a fun place to be at our stage of life. Yeah. Cool. Any what else comes to mind in your entrepreneurial journeys and faith journey?
Well, I went to the doctor yesterday just for a checkup, and I had never met him before. And he's like, what do you do? Making small talk. He was, checking for, skin damage or anything on my shoulders and ears and head. And he's like, you look like you spent some time in the sun. He's like, what do you do? And I'm like, I'm stumped. I couldn't answer. It was early in the morning. It was early, but I'm like, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
He's like, whatever. I was like, what do you do? He's like, well, I'm a doctor. I was like, okay, I do everything except for that. And that's why I'm here. And we're joking around, but I'm like, I don't know. I said, I do real estate. Okay, there's a good simple answer. Yeah. Oh, you sell real estate? I do. What else? And I'm like, I wasn't ready for this. This is like, I thought I was going to a skin doctor, not like a psychiatrist. Yeah. I wasn't ready. And I'm like, I do whatever I can. I got animals. I got a farm. Okay, there. I said it. He's like, you got a farm? What do you have? I'm like, whatever. I got one pig left, buddy. Kevin Bacon bit the dust last year. He's in the freezer.
Oh, man. Yeah.
but yeah, if I went back, 25 years and my perception of what an entrepreneur was, which I wanted to start a landscape company. That was like my dream. Install, that was like my dream. And
Yeah.
I did that for a little while. Um, I would have thought that was an entrepreneur was somebody who started a business and ran that business successfully till they were 60,
Yeah.
retire 5 years early because they had a successful business, maybe 50 if they were that good. That was like an
Yeah.
entrepreneur to me.
Yeah.
And it's just changed so much. I've looked in over the last couple of weeks what the definition of an entrepreneur is. I swear entrepreneurs are writing the definition for entrepreneur because there's 10 different definitions depending on depending on where
Yeah.
you read.
Yeah.
And it's not the same as a businessman. I just thought, oh, it's a
Yeah.
businessman slash it's an entrepreneur, but it's just not. And we had the opportunity to visit our family in Norway this past summer, and a lot of family people I'd never met before, and it was great time to meet up with them. A lot of the history in there was fishermen. Down at Duck Island, same thing. Down at Wanchese, a lot of fishermen, shrimpers, charter guys, and I'm like, the fisherman is an entrepreneur. I mean,
Yeah.
that's just the way it is. There is
Yeah.
there's no guarantee of anything, but they have an idea and they have a belief in themselves, and they're going to go out and do it and figure it out. And there's days that are horrible, and there's days that come in and they're making $5,000-6,000 a day on their catch, and other people around tend to look at that and say, "Wow, those people are killing it. $5,000 a
Yeah.
day. I mean, they got to be millionaires." But generally, people view an entrepreneur as somebody who just everything they touch is turns to gold.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't really know what. Maybe we tend to tell the stories that are more successful. You mentioned, I've got a boat at the bottom of the sea. I bet many people can't say that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I got to check on that, by the way. But again, these are things that were a good idea, and it started out, and I calculated everything, and I was going to take it down and set up it as an Airbnb, a nice houseboat, and a storm. I got a call from the marina, and this guy says, "Hey, your boat's at the bottom of the marina." Well, I didn't. That wasn't in the plans. I mean, that wasn't.
That wasn't even in the worst case scenario plans.
No, that wasn't. I mean, that wasn't even. I figured if it was going to sink, it was when I was underway, not while I was still sitting in the parking spot.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's many things like that you come to the head, and it's a break even or a loss or different things like that. Or, you've got a project that takes 5 years. Well, there's no pay in that 5 years. It might be a side thing or whatever. And it's like, can you hold your breath that long? And can you figure that stuff out? So we've always had side stuff and diversification of income has been very important to us. And it will continue to be yes, it keeps us busy, and people like, I don't want to write this all on paper because I don't want to be overwhelmed. Right?
Yeah.
Don't tell me what's going on. But that also keeps, it keeps things fresh. And I think, passing that information on, that was the other, I guess, presumption I had when I was young, was an entrepreneur is their own force of nature, right?
Yeah.
That's a lone wolf, and they're going to do their thing. And the more I realize that the entrepreneur is more of it's a group think. It's a conversations you and I have had, and gravitating towards people who think differently or outside of the box, I guess is a cliche way to say it. But the one gentleman in Norway, is Olaf. He has got a Model T in a garage. And I'm like, how did this even get here? He took us for a ride this past summer in the Model T, and I thought we were going to die, like up the sides of these cliffs. And I'm like, guy's literally trying to kill us. But all he kept talking about was possibility thinkers. He's like the possibility things. Everybody thinks in probabilities. They calculate risk and they say, I'm going to get, I'm going to settle in here, and that's the path I'm going to take because, it pays the bills, it gives me a little extra, and this is the life I'm going to live.
Yeah.
But he's like the possibility thinker. And they told stories, all the people who moved to the United States for a better life and, got a job on some shipping vessel and some were never seen again. But like this adventurer spirit of, I don't know what there is, but it's exciting for me enough to pursue it and go after it. Some will say, the greatest risk is regret, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to take risk. I'm not a risk taker, whatever. But the biggest risk is you reach 65 and look back and say, I have so many regrets of the things I wish I had done.
Yeah.
And that is, you can't do everything, but when I feel like God presents me an opportunity, I'm not going to say I'm too busy or I'm not going to say whatever. For me, it's to go evaluate it. I want to see it. I want to kick the tires, and see what it does, see what it can do.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just a matter of I've had regular jobs through this whole series. Like we're like, oh no, like we diversify 5 ways and they're all, in a holding pattern south, get a real job or whatever for a short period of time. Yeah. And I don't regret any of those. I wasn't fired from any of those, which for some reason I count as a badge of honor. It was very close. But there's stuff I learned in those jobs, and everything that I did, whether somebody will say, well, that was a failure, your boat sank. Well, I learned very valuable things, about
absolutely
different things like that. Which, again, there's no such thing as a dumb question. And I'm like, well, there's such thing as a dumb question. You just get dumb answers. But it's the same thing as some people say there's no such thing as a failure as long as you learn from that failure, which growing up always seemed like a way to like just make someone feel better for coming in last. Right.
Right.
But the truth is in real life, you can learn way more than through experience. People say failure, experience is the best teacher. They also say as long as it's someone else's experience. But if it's your experience, you bear the scars, right? Yeah. You got taught, you learned way better than the guy who watched you get burned, because you definitely will never do it again, or you will change the way you do things. But failure is also usually the most time consuming and expensive way to learn. Yeah. If you're doing it yourself.
I think I liked what you said about possibility thinking versus probability thinking. And I think there's things like, the fact that you own an island is because it's like, hey, how can we possibly get this? What could come out of this? How do we make it happen? And the house that I bought here in Roanoke, 15 years ago, I would sit behind my father-in-law's house on the stream and look over to this big piece of property and go, man, that'd be really cool to have that one day, God, or that'd be great to host people, and then your son Clay came to our school and he was one of the people that got to live there and experience it. And I just called the lady up, like, the house isn't for sale. I just said, hey, do you want to sell? And I think just going, what is possible in this situation, or what can we make happen? How can we? I always think like add value and then ask outrageously, but asking, and like that lady is a good example. Like I had to build her trust. I had to move her out of the property. I had to not shame her for being a hoarder. Like there was all these things that like I added value to her life, so I could ask her outrageously just to sell and, move on. And I think for entrepreneurs going, okay, what is possible in this situation? How do we add value to others? How do we make it happen? I think for me, like one of the biggest values is just freedom, like even so right now I'm in the middle of starting, we've left Stop Slavery. I'm starting my own business, Map Winners, to help people get to the top of Google with their business, grow their businesses. And, but I'm in this season where it's like, it's startup. So like I've had to say no to going to weddings that are, a flight away or, just different things that like next summer I want to have the freedom to do that. But this is a season of like buckling down, growing the business, making things happen. But ultimately, like freedom is a huge driver for me. My wife's like, why don't you just get a job? Someone offered a job that was like good money. Why don't you just take that? And I'm like, no, can't. I can't. It's been, I haven't worked for anyone else since 1999. And like to go to a 9 to 5, I might as well just shoot myself. Because what if I want to take a hike at noon, or I want to talk to Scott for an hour on a podcast, or I want to do something fun? I think for me, that value of freedom is a huge one that just drives me to do what I do. Like I'm willing to like work hard or work late or whatever, do things that are really uncomfortable to make something happen, so that I have, more freedom in the long run. Yeah.
Yeah. And that, crazy. I mean, that sums up the Buddy I've always known. From, I swear we were on bus trips, like to go back, coming back from a game or something. And coach was like, where's Buddy? And someone was like, oh, he hitchhiked. He went home with somebody else. He took a train. I don't know. I'm like, we get to an ice cream place as a team, and there's 2 girls working behind the counter, and you jump over the counter and start serving ice cream, and everybody's just like, what's happening here?
I think it was really
we
slow.
may have gotten a lot of free ice cream right there.
I'd forgotten about that.
You're right. It was super slow.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But you can't do everything in a business or a venture, but you have to be willing to do anything, right? Like that's I don't know. I don't know how to do this. I'm diving onto the boat to scrape, barnacles off or whatever, or, cutting a crab pot out of the motor because, and a couple of years ago, we were about to launch our duck hunting and fishing charters, which we will be, coming 2023 or 2024. And all of our locations are over water, or 2 miles over water, and we don't have a captain on staff. And I'm like, well, we got 2 weeks. I'm going to go to captain school and get a captain's license. Yeah. Not in a million years would I've assumed that was going to be the case, but I'm like, I am not going to get to the point where we're opening and somebody says you need a captain.
Yeah.
you need a boat captain or whatever. And I'm like, I'm here. We have the boat, and there's stuff that you just have to learn how to do or be willing to do, to bridge the gap. And especially in the interim of your finding good leaders within your business is okay, I believe in this person. I know they can do it, but it also means there's going to be a certain period of time where they're not going to do it well or up to my standards, or they're going to do it incorrectly. I got to be willing to step in there and fill a gap or do whatever. And we'd always do that. Unfortunately, there's been times where I've been stuck in a rut doing that activity over and over again. The golf course is one. That was, we intended to buy that and turn it into a development. The market got sour. So we're like, let's open a golf course then, and then we'll build homes on the course. And still a possibility, but that was a short-term plan. I'll manage the course. I'll learn how to do it, and we'll do it, figure out everything. I was literally calling people saying, how tall do you cut grass on a tee box? I don't know this stuff. And we found some of the right people, but as far as someone being there, and so I'm sitting there, 12 years later, I'm running a pro shop, and I'm like, this isn't the life that this is not like ideal.
This isn't the dream.
Right. And it was a family. That was my brothers and I. It was a full family, venture. And I lived closest. And so I'm like, I'll do it. And then, 10, 11 years later, I'm like, I'm not getting younger here. And,
Yeah.
this is a big thing. But within that time, Mike started training. He started picking up more things. And we just kind of switched. I was able to move down here to North Carolina, and we sold the church that we ended up living in for a while, which was the goal, and it was great.
Yeah.
I can literally tell people my kids grew up in the church, and you know,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's not normal. The freedom, again, when I was in Norway, a lot of those people have been in the same job for 40 years. It's like they started there,
Wow.
and and it's not rigid, but it is very structured. I mean, you
Yeah.
go to work for one place, and that's what your lot in life is. And they were
Yeah.
asking me what I was doing, and I'm like, we do all kinds of stuff. And then one of them was like, Americans are all about their freedom. I was like, well, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, it's,
Yeah.
I believe that God put us in this point in time, and he put us in this country where you can do this stuff. And he gave me different abilities, different ambitions.
Yeah.
And it, there's times that I feel like it's a responsibility to exercise those things because God has blessed us and where he's put us in life. It's literally,
Yeah.
and it comes and evaluating things. And you say, God, you want me to do this? And instead of sitting around and asking for a yes, this makes sense for everything I evaluated, my motives in it, the why, it's all right. If God doesn't want me to do it, he's got the power to
Yeah.
make it quite obvious that that's not going to, he sunk my boat. Okay. He
Yeah.
sunk my boat. Um, which is fine. I mean, he didn't go all Jonah on me, so I guess I'm happy about that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but again, the
Yeah.
importance of having godly accountability like yourself and many other people that I've been able to link up with, that I can make a call and say, what do you think about this? Am I looking at this wrong? Pray for
Yeah.
me in this. Is there something that, like, would you do this? Um,
Yeah.
is just a huge asset. The network, the idea of network for me back in the, again, presumptions of what an entrepreneur was. A network was people to make money off of. And
Yeah.
when you look at, like, oh, well, he's got a network, that's like, oh, different ways of pouring money, but it's not, it's an even field where people don't have a financial benefit per se from each other. It's
Yeah.
more of a brotherhood, or um, again, just trying to figure stuff out. And it's been a huge blessing over the last years.
Yeah.
Hopefully continue
Yeah.
to be so.
I think having network, it's a give and take, right? Like you're always looking how you can add value to others, be a blessing to others, serve others. I asked my wife this morning because I was running a few minutes late, and a contractor showed up that I've been making coffee for in the mornings. And so I said, hey, could you make, she was already working her job, but I said, hey, can you make some coffee? I'm running late. And I said, remember your theme song, as I walked out? And she's like, no, what? I'm like, make me a servant. And she's like, quit singing because I'm awful. And she's like, she doesn't want to be a servant right now. She wants to do her own thing.
No.
But she was willing to do it, and serve the guy coffee and helped him. But I think
And you believed in her.
I believed in her that she could do it, and she did it, and came through for Tennessee, our contractor. But I think, I don't know. I do remember being 16 and a youth leader saying to me, buddy, you always are willing to help. If I ask you to help, you're willing to do anything. But this lady, her name was Steph, she said, what I want you to do is I want you to see the need and you take care of it before someone asks you to do, like, that's your next level. And at 16, there was no like seeing the need of anything. I'm sure my mom would never say, oh yeah, buddy would just see the dishes and he would go and take care of them. But they actually did do a good job of that. I did dishes when I was young, but in 7th grade, I exchanged dishes, which cut into playtime, for doing the family's laundry So I did the whole laundry for 6 of us, but I could do that when my friends were doing homework, so I didn't really miss out on playtime. So it worked out well. Well, I think we just set the record for the longest BAM School podcast ever.
Oh,
yeah.
Is that good or
Great
bad?
having you on. I next year, before you open Duck Island officially for all these people to come on, I need to have you and Stan on, and we'll talk about Duck Island and some of your adventures, you and Stan together, and that will be a lot of fun. So thanks for being on the podcast, Scott.
Thanks for having me, buddy. Good chatting with you.
Yeah. All right, I'm hitting stop. As it uploads, and it should end quickly.
BAM School, facilitating a global, self-funding, disciple-making movement through business. Thanks for tuning in to the BAM School podcast. Find show notes, free courses, resources, and more at 4bam.com.